it is not true. We're going to protect the benefits that everyone is legally entitled to.
We are all aligned on the need to make the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, to restore American energy dominance, to grow our economy, and to make a generational investment in our border security. And also,
Republicans in the House and in the Senate have also joined Democrats to push for legislation that will provide congressional oversight over the president's tariff policies.
Let me just say that I support the president 100% when it comes to the critical goals that he's talking about: onshoring, critical manufacturing, growing American jobs, ensuring fair trade, and making sure that markets abroad are a good place for the sale of U.S. goods. I just think we need to make sure we do it in the right way. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is clear on this. Congress has the power to impose tariffs.
Congress is in recess until April 28th. Republicans will then have less than 1 month to pass a reconciliation bill before their own self-imposed Memorial Day deadline. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The judge partially lifts the ban of the Department of Government Efficiency's access to the Treasury Department's payment systems. NTD Washington correspondent Jason Blair has more on this.
So a federal judge in New York did ease up a ban that was keeping DOJ from accessing sensitive data at the Treasury Department. Now the condition is only one staffer from DOJ can access the Treasury Department's payment systems. And this employee must first also go through the standard hands-on training that the Treasury Department employees go through, as well as submit a financial disclosure report. So this is involving a case back in February. 19 states sued trying to block DOJ from doing their efforts and saying that they pose privacy and national security threats and should not be given access to sensitive data. The American Library Association, as well as a union called the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Union, they did both sue the Trump administration and DOJ, trying to block their efforts to downsizing the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS. And in the lawsuit, they are saying without grant funding or IMLS staff to process reimbursements, local and state libraries will suffer an immediate and irreparable inability to pay vendors or staff hired in reliance on IMLS's promise to make these reimbursements. And they also say IMLS provides important day-to-day services and advice to libraries across the country, which has already ceased, causing irreparable harm. So last month, President Trump signed an executive order to downsize IMLS and other federal agencies.
Harvard University officials today rejected the Trump administration's demands to make sweeping changes to its governance, admissions, and hiring practices. Harvard is the first school to push back against the government's efforts to bring about changes, and it has the most funding potentially at stake. The Trump administration announced recently it was reviewing $9 billion in contracts and grants for the university. The requested changes come after intense protests last year of the Israel-Hamas war, fueling concerns of anti-Semitism on campuses. Other changes relate to ending DEI programs and topics surrounding gender ideology. The man accused of breaking into the Pennsylvania governor's mansion and setting fire to the home allegedly planned to beat Governor Josh Shapiro with a hammer. The blaze caused significant damage and forced Shapiro, his family, and guests to evacuate the building early Sunday.
Reporting a large fire in the dining room on the first floor. They can see fire out the windows. G5, it sounds like you're on fire.
But we do know that this attack was targeted. We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay.
Shapiro said they were awakened by state troopers pounding on their doors at about 2 a.m. Sunday. No one was injured, authorities said. Cody Balmer scaled a nearly 9-foot or 7-foot rather high iron security fence, eluded officers, and forcibly entered the residence before setting it on fire with Molotov cocktails. Police said the 38-year-old appeared to have carefully planned the attack and that he was inside the residence for about a minute before escaping. According to court documents, Balmer told police he had planned to beat Shapiro with a hammer if he encountered him while inside. President Donald Trump condemned the attack. Palmer's mother told CBS News that she had reached out to police before the incident. She told the outlet, quote, "He was mentally ill, went off his meds, and this is what happened." Palmer faces charges including attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault. Just prior to the Salvadoran president's White House visit, the U.S. deported another 10 alleged gang members to El Salvador's maximum security prison. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The U.S. deported 10 alleged Venezuelan and Salvadorian gang members to El Salvador this weekend. That's just before the president of El Salvador paid a visit to the White House. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made the announcement on Sunday, saying the move shows security and prosperity in the hemisphere. The deportees were booked into the notorious Terrorism Confinement Center, where their heads were shaved, and they were taken to prison cells. Last month, the Trump administration struck a deal with El Salvador to pay $6 million to hold around 300 alleged gang members for 1 year. Now, the Trump administration has already sent roughly 260 deportees there, but there's still thousands left to deport.
There are thousands of either trained Nicaragua members left in this country or their affiliates and associates. So obviously some portion of those will be going to El Salvador as part of our effort to eradicate this foreign terrorist organization from the United States. But there's no upper limit to the agreement. We're going to continue to send foreign terrorist aliens to El Salvador as well as to many other countries.
The U.S. has designated both the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and the Salvadorian gang MS-13 as terrorist organizations. Now, this allows the U.S. to deport illegal immigrants that are part of these groups without a legal process. The Trump administration said that the gang members are conducting a form of modern warfare. And with Tren de Aragua in particular, they're accused of working with the Maduro regime to infiltrate the U.S. to commit crimes. Both gangs have long been linked to multiple murders, theft, and drug and human trafficking. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The National Transportation Safety Board gave an update today on the fatal helicopter crash on the Hudson River last week. Board member J. Todd Inman described the information and other data investigators were gathering.
Aircraft recovery experts have arrived on scene. They arrived a few hours ago. They're currently working on the extraction of the aircraft itself. We anticipate this will be concluded by tomorrow evening, at which point the wreckage will all be moved to a secure facility in Massachusetts, where part of our team will relocate in order to do a more thorough examination of the aircraft itself and the structure. We've also received from the FAA ADS-B data. This is Automated Detection Surveillance Broadcast. It's commonly referred to as ADS-B. We have received that data from the FAA, and it gives us a much greater fidelity of information regarding altitude, speed, location, trajectory. It will be overlaid with a number of the other parts of our investigation, including the air traffic control radar information. As part of the FAA review, we will also be doing video replays of the actual ATC or air traffic control scopes that were being seen at the time.
New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said the helicopter took off around 3 p.m. Thursday and flew north along the Hudson. After reaching the George Washington Bridge, it turned south and crashed shortly afterwards. Footage showed the aircraft plunging into the water about 15 minutes later. The crash killed a family of 5 and the pilot. The aircraft had its last major inspection done on March 1st. The Justice Department announced charges today against the suspect of accusing of committing arson at the New Mexico Republican Party's headquarters at a Tesla dealership in the state. Attorney General Pam Bondi posted on X that her office is seeking a sentence of up to 40 years if it wins a conviction. The first arson took place February 9th at a Tesla dealership in Albuquerque. The second fire was ignited on March 30th at the Republican Party headquarters, also located in Albuquerque. Investigators discovered graffiti on the Republican Party building that read, "ICE equals KKK." Other Tesla showrooms, vehicle lots, charging stations, and privately owned cars have been targeted across the country in recent weeks. Coming up after the break, changes at Social Security go into effect today. The new measures are in place to try to prevent fraud. That and more when we come back.
The Word of God is. We got to get into it But I love that when you accept Jesus, you first get upgraded.
Big in a whole new operating system.
in a whole
I'm
new
not operating off the
come on.
flesh anymore. I'm operating off the Spirit and grace.
Love that. Yes, the Bible's for, because the Bible now tells you how your system operates.
That's right.
Which I love, because the thing is, it's not of works lest any man can boast. This is a new nature. And this is what one of my favorite scriptures is this, when Paul says, this is the revelation that was hidden from the ages, Christ in me, the hope of glory. When Christ is in you, now it's the hope of being a better father, the hope of overcoming the addiction, the hope of loving the unlovable, the hope of forgiving the unforgivable. And guess why it is? Because I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, not I. Good God Almighty, but Christ.
Listen, we haven't.
On today's Business Matters, it looks like many Americans are worried about the U.S. job market. According to a survey from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, 44% say they believe the national unemployment rate will rise next year. And that's the highest response to that question since April 2020, which is shortly after the COVID-19 pandemic emerged. Now, nearly 16% of those polled also said they have concerns about their own jobs. Meanwhile, NVIDIA is planning to build AI infrastructure worth as much as $500 billion in the United States over the next 4 years. Today's announcement marks the latest American tech firm to back the Trump administration's push for domestic manufacturing. NVIDIA's Blackwell AI chips will be produced at Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's factory in Phoenix, Arizona. The company added that its supercomputer manufacturing plants in Texas by Foxconn and Wistron are expected to ramp up production in the next 12 to 15 months. NVIDIA said that Taiwan's TSMC has started production of its latest generation chips at its Arizona factory. TSMC has said it plans to make a fresh $100 billion investment in the U.S. Now, funding from the world's biggest contract chip maker will involve building 5 additional plants as well. China and Vietnam have signed dozens of cooperation agreements aimed at strengthening ties in the trade and supply chain. So the contents of the agreements were not disclosed, and it was not clear whether any financial or binding commitments were involved. Though the deal came during Chinese Communist Party Xi Jinping's visit to Hanoi today, Beijing is now facing a 145% tariff from the U.S., while Vietnam is negotiating a reduction in the potential 46% U.S. tariff. Inflation from recent tariffs will be temporary. That's the view Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller shared during a policy speech in St. Louis. Waller believes the president is either using tariffs as a negotiation tactic or as a tool to remake the economy. For longer-lasting tariffs, Waller is predicting a larger inflation spike that would ebb with slowed growth and increased unemployment. For smaller tariffs, Waller would expect inflation to hit around 3%, then fall off. Either way, the Fed will still cut interest rates, but the timing is unclear. Waller said smaller duties could mean a cut later this year, while larger tariffs might force a cut to support growth. There's been some bad blood between President Trump and Mark Zuckerberg over the years, surrounding Facebook, that is. At one time, Trump even threatened to throw Zuckerberg in prison if election meddling ever happened again, but they have become much closer since then. NTD Sean Marshall has the details for us on the background of the lawsuit between Meta and the FTC.
The case, FTC antitrust lawsuit, filed during President Donald Trump's first term, claims Meta bought Instagram and WhatsApp a decade ago to eliminate Facebook's competition among social media platforms, where users connect with friends and family. The FTC seeks to force Meta to restructure or sell parts of its business, including Instagram and WhatsApp. FTC attorney Daniel Matheson said that the unlawful strategy established entry barriers that for more than a decade protected Meta's dominance. Consumers do not have reasonable alternatives they can turn to. And on the other side, Meta Chief Legal Officer Jennifer Newstead called the case weak and a deterrent to tech investment. In a blog post on Sunday, she wrote that it's absurd that the FTC is trying to break up a great American company at the same time the administration is trying to save Chinese-owned TikTok. After all these years, it remains to be seen whether Zuckerberg is a friend or an enemy In a book released last year, Trump accused Zuckerberg of plotting against him in 2020. Trump said if he does anything illegal this time, he will spend the rest of his life in prison, as will others who cheat in the 2024 presidential election. In January, Zuckerberg issued a turnaround when it comes to fact-checking and censorship of Facebook and other platforms, responding in part to Trump's long-held complaints about censorship. He also stood with other tech CEOs at Trump's inauguration, an extraordinary sight that Trump has brought up many times since. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
With another round of Social Security payments going out this week, the agency has stepped up its anti-fraud measures. The maximum retirement benefit based on a person's salary history and retirement age is now just over $5,000. The agency has new policies in place for recipients who update their direct deposit information and anti-fraud checks for people who apply for benefits over the phone. Here's more.
In an effort to strengthen identity verification, the Social Security Administration has implemented new rules for recipients. Social Security will now conduct an anti-fraud check on benefit applications that are made by phone, and it will flag claims that could be fraudulent. This policy has been updated and walked back several times, causing some confusion. The most up-to-date version states that applicants can still file over the phone for all programs. Only those who are flagged over fraud concerns have to appear in person to verify their identity. Of the 4 million claims filed by phone, the agency expects about 70,000 to be flagged. Also, beneficiaries will no longer be allowed to change direct deposit information by telephone. The agency says about 40% of direct deposit fraud comes from calls to change bank information. Going forward, beneficiaries will have to change their bank accounts through their My Social Security website or visit a local office. Critics have slammed the measures. They say they will hinder many Americans from access to their Social Security payments, especially those who are not computer savvy or able to travel to an office.
President Trump said again he doesn't think it's a good idea to give a foreign company ownership of U.S. Steel. Speaking on the proposed buyout offer from a Japanese firm, here's more.
Donald Trump said Sunday he doesn't think a foreign company should control U.S. Steel. The U.S. president repeated comments made last week that lowered hopes for the $15 billion takeover bid by Japan's Nippon Steel.
I think that the United States Steel, one of the great companies of the world, U.S. Steel, should remain in our country.
He further